Hello and welcome back to Suspended Fanimation. I'm your host, Dennis Patholkis, and this is Doom Patrol, Season 1, Episode 13, Flex Patrol. And that sneezing you can hear in the background is my dog. She's just sneezing right now. So that's why I started to laugh, because just as soon as I got on, she just started to do a little sneezing, and I could hear it in the microphone, which I thought was pretty damn funny. So, a continuation of last week's episode, which was good. I mean, I, okay. So I know there's people that don't like this series for whatever reason it is. Maybe it's because it's too character driven and stuff like that. It's actually really well written. It's actually the way you want something to be in a series. A movie's a different subject when you're doing superheroes. This is a series. This is actually very well done. And quite honestly, the end of the episode is kind of what made it for me on this one. Although everything else in between too is really good. So before I start here, spoiler alert, this is going to be spoiled. If you haven't seen the episode, go and watch the episode. Come on back. This will be a video. You can comment down below in the comment section. Thank you, Viking Bitch. I know you're here. Thank you for being here. And I agree with you. This was a fantastic episode. So let me take a little sip of my beverage here. Let's get started, shall we? So we start off in Great Bend, Kansas, not to be confused with Great Bend, Indiana, or Great Bend, Arkansas, or Great Bend, Missouri, but Great Bend, Kansas in 1964. And we see Flex Mentallo walking around in his swim trunks and shoes with his best girl, Dolores, and they're walking through the park. Everyone's saying hi to him and everything like that. And they're getting ready to have a picnic. And we see him doing some little tricks every time he flexes his muscles. And he's got some powers just to kind of flutter out the picnic mat there. And then also he's making food appear. He's making drinks appear, a flower, and all this kind of stuff. And of course, someone starts. We hear this little boy, crying out for help, and he looks at Dolores. She's like, "Go ahead, go take care of it." And so he goes over, and the little boy's like, he asks him, "What's going on? What's the problem?" And the boy points up. He's sniffling at the tree, and there's a kitten in a tree. So we see him flex his arm, and he actually just, the tree trunk bends down a little bit, and he takes the kitten off there and goes, "That's okay, little buddy. You're fine now." And we see him, looking at the kitten, and the kitten's mouth opens up and this light comes out. I kind of had a Big Trouble in Little China moment there for a second. And we see him, the light hits Flex Mentallo's face and Flex disappears into the cat. Sound a little familiar? And then the cat is on the ground there and walking away. And we see the boy talking to his watch and he says, "Target acquired." So obviously the boy is working for the Bureau at this point. Hey, Penn. Hey, Slurmy. So yeah, so we see the ant farm now, of course, with all the butts flying around and killing people, and you know everything's just going to hell in a handbasket. And we see a very bloody Darren scrambling through the hallways, kicking butts, quite literally. And he has his gun out and everything, and he calls for reinforcements to for containment of the abnormals, as he puts it, as he's shooting these people in the head as they're coming at him. Cyborg, in the meantime, is still in the hallway there, thinking that he killed his dad. And Rita's like, no, he's still alive. And Cliff is trying to get Jane to get Flit to get them out of there because, of course, Flit can teleport them anywhere at this point. And Jane's like, that's not how it works. She's getting all pissed off at him and everything. And in the meantime, the entity goes flying into the room of 722, who is next door to Vic, of course. And we find out that he looks strangely familiar. So he won't leave his room. And he's actually talking to the entity. We see him talking to him, and he calls the entity Sparky. And he says, "No, I'm not supposed to leave. You can't leave your room unless, it's not authorized." And so the entity grabs his remote control and runs out of the room. And of course, he runs after it. And Rita recognizes him as Flex Mentallo, the guy that they've been looking for to find Chief, of course. And also, they've got Vic at this point, too. In the meantime, the Bureau's goons are coming in on both sides of the hallway, so they're trapped. And, Cliff's like, we need to get the fuck out of here now, of course. So Jane tells everyone to hold on to each other, which they do, and she flits them out of there. Jane's getting a little bit better at actually going back and forth between personalities and using her powers. That's the good thing about this, is that they are now finally starting to get control of their powers more and more. Excuse me. And we're seeing that this episode. Got a little ice chip there that kind of flew down my throat for a second. So they're back at the manor, and Vic's dad is not doing good. And she goes, "Yeah, he needs a doctor." So Flit comes back, grabs onto Vic and his dad, and transports him, and then comes back. And Rita's like, "Where the hell did you take him?" And she says, "The hospital. That's where they need to be." And she goes, and Rita's like, "You can't take Vic there in his state of mind. He's actually fragile right now. He can't be alone." So Flit comes back again, grabs Rita, takes her, comes back, and Cliff's like, "What the fuck?" Because basically she just took Rita over there. She goes, she wanted to be over there. She said he couldn't be alone, so I took Rita over there. So Rita's with him now. He's not alone. You can't argue with that logic at this point. You knew Vic's dad was going to be alive, Viking bitch. It was there's a couple of things that were telegraphed here quite a bit, which I didn't mind because I knew where they were going there with this. So Cliff wants to celebrate that they got two things right. They found Vic, got him out, and they also found Flex Mentallo. So, he says, "Hey, we saved a superhero," and he's trying to clap and everything. And Flex is like a little 3-year-old, and he's kind of clapping along and laughing with them. And Jane's kind of pissed off, and Larry says, "You know what? I'm feeling kind of sleepy. I need to get some rest." And so he leaves, and the entity keeps following him. And Larry tries to tell him, he goes, "You know what? We're not joined at the hip anymore. You can leave anytime you want to." He goes, "Really, I just kind of want to be alone and lay down." And he goes into the room. The entity follows him, and he goes, "Really, I don't need 6 feet of electricity standing over me." And that's when the entity goes into him. And we go back to the ant farm again when Larry was there. And we have him in a new suit, of course, courtesy of Forsyth. And he's being experimented on again by Forsyth. And Forsyth brings out this device that he says a certain frequency that'll give the entity inside of him a headache. That's what it should do in theory, and bring him out, because he won't come out. He's only come out that one time when he killed all the Bureau agents inside the room. And so they amp it up a bit, and the entity finally comes out, and the guy inside the room holds a gun on Larry. And they basically said, "Hey, you know what? If you decide to harm anybody, we're gonna, kill your body, your host, and you need the host to survive, right? So, yeah, you're gonna do what I tell you next time. When I tell you to come out, you come out. You don't fuck with me," is what Forsyth tells them. So, yeah, kind of crappy. So Larry is dragged back into his cell, and we find out that he was actually housed next to 722, who is actually Flex Mentallo. Excuse me. And but Flex, of course, hasn't been turned into 722 yet. He is still Flex Mentallo. He's been strapped to a chair. He's got all these electrodes on him, and he says that basically the electrodes are dampening his power, but they haven't gotten away completely. And he's able to make a crack in the wall. And he says, "Hey, buddy, if you can just reach in here and pull off some of these electrodes, I can get us out of here." And Larry's like, "Leave me alone. I don't want to do this. We're stuck here. There's no escape." Exactly what 722 is telling Vic later on. So now we know where that came from. And we hear some guys coming down the hallway. And so Flex actually seals back up the wall again. And they come in with a cattle prod and some clothes, and saying that, the abomination needs to put on some clothing. And of course, Flex just flings the agent against the wall and doesn't cooperate, of course, which I thought was, pretty good there at this point. So they start shocking him with the cattle prod and telling him, "You're going to change one way or another." And he, of course, screams out in pain, and the entity has come out of Larry at this point. He was going to help, and the entity is watching in the vent, too. I forgot to mention, too, that Flex can actually hear the entity speak. So they were talking for a while. There was a kind of a one-sided conversation, but yeah, we did have that. So Cliff and Jane, in the meantime, are trying to get Flex, to remember who he is, and Flex keeps calling Cliff Scrap because Cliff has that scrap sticker on his forehead, and he goes, "Jane, can you help me?" And she goes, "Sure." She rips off the S, and Flex, of course, starts laughing. And Cliff goes, "You just ripped off the S, didn't you?" She goes, "Of course I did, dumbass." And every time they ask, Flex a question, he's like, "I don't know, I don't know," and they're getting both pissed off at this point. Until finally he goes, "We're never going to find the chief with this guy." And he goes, "Wait, you know the chief?" is what Flex says. And suddenly he knows who the chief is and says, "Yeah, the chief died. He died 20 years ago. His twin brother Nick took over, and Nick fathered a love child with the chief's old wife, who happens to be their sister. They didn't know it at the time." And of course, he's talking about a plot from his soap opera that he's been watching for these last couple of decades. Crap, just like some YouTube channels. Nice. Um, and yeah, and I love how Cliff says, "You know what? I guessed it on that show once." And Jane is not impressed. She actually wants to vomit. And he keeps looking at the comic picture of himself and going, "Yeah, that's a handsome guy," is what he says. And then he says, "You know what? That's a guy that you want to be like him someday." And Jane gets an idea and tells him to take off his clothes. And Cliff's like, "I don't know. Can we ask him to do that?" And he's like, "Okay." And he starts taking off his clothes, of course. In the meantime, we see that Vic's dad is stable. He's in the hospital. He's on a ventilator, of course. And Vic realizes that Mr. Nobody basically just twisted his own thoughts in his head. And he's telling Rita all of this and saying that, he almost killed him and he couldn't trust himself. And it was this whole thing about uploading Grid, of course, and how he didn't trust his father with it. And that Mr. Nobody used that to screw with his mind, and that they should never have gone after Mr. Nobody. Never should have tried to find him. Yeah. And Rita wants Vic to turn Grid back on so they can find the beard hunter. And he doesn't want to because he's scared, of course. So Rita kind of stands there looking at him for a second. Then she gives him Grid because she, of course, had the little chip that his dad had, and gives it to him and walks out of the room. In the meantime, Cliff and Jane are trimming Flex's hair. They're trying to get rid of all that hair. And I love how Cliff's like, "Doesn't one of your personalities, did any of them go to beauty school or beauty academy or something like that?" And Jane just kind of gives him a glare. And he goes, "Speaking of which, how are people down in the underground?" And she doesn't want to talk about it, of course, either. And she's like, "You know what? If you keep asking about this, I'm going to do to you what I'm doing to this guy's hair." And of course, she's butchering it, is what's going on. So they get done, and Flex sees himself in the mirror, and of course, he still doesn't recognize himself. Yeah, that's going to be, something that happens. In the meantime, Rita is sitting inside the lobby of the hospital with watching TV and eating his snowballs. And we see Animal Vegetable Mineral Man has agreed with federal prosecutors to give him the location in Paraguay of Von Fuchs Hospital, and in exchange for freedom, of course. And he got shot out on the courthouse steps by a Von Fuchs disciple, which I thought was pretty damn funny because you see him at one point, he's on the ground and he's telling the velociraptor head not to bite, "Stop biting, stop biting," as, of course, he's shot in the chest. And it's just really weird. So she goes to get on the she starts hearing a baby crying, and she gets up. Of course, this triggers Rita. Every time a baby cries, she kind of gets triggered a bit. And we see her get up, and she's going to the elevator. She's going to go back up to the room there, and this old man steps off the elevator, and he's asked her for a little bit of help. He goes, "Do you work here?" And she goes, "No, I don't work here." He goes, "Can you help me find my room? I've been looking around for it. I can't find it." It's Ed Asner, by the way, who is the old man. And yeah, but he was hitting the minerals exactly, so he'll be okay. Yeah, he wasn't hitting the animal or the vegetable side. He was just hitting the minerals, which I love that line too, which made me laugh. I mean, God, animal, vegetable, mineral man. What? Yeah. So she agrees to help him out and help him find his room, the old man. Flex, in the meantime, is watching his soap opera, and Jane comes in. She goes, "You know what? We tried the carrot. Now it's time to try the stick." And, Cliff's like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "He got pissed off when you tried talking over his soap opera. Why don't you try it again?" So, of course, he tries talking over during the soap opera, and Flex keeps telling him to shut up. And finally, Cliff just walks over to the TV and puts his fist into it. And you see Flex get pissed for a second. He kind of leans forward like he's going to fight Cliff because they want to see what his superpowers are too. And then all of a sudden he starts crying, which of course makes Cliff feel bad at that point, which it should. I know. Poor Flex. Exactly. So the old guy, he's sitting down with Rita and he's telling him, she asks him, doesn't he have any family to help him find his room? And he goes, well, no. He goes, I did some really shitty things. He goes, I left my family in the middle of the night long time ago. He goes, it was pretty bad. He goes, I shouldn't have done this. And so I have nobody pretty much. They don't come for me and they just kind of left me here. And Rita says, oh, well, you're a saint compared to what I did. And then she goes into this whole story about this producer, Jean, that all her roles had dried up. No one was calling her anymore. Gene, the producer, said, well, if he wanted to meet this Hollywood starlet, and that if she could introduce him to her, she would, of course, get roles. So she did. And a year later, this Hollywood starlet was receiving an Oscar. She goes, and the phone rang again, and he wanted to meet another starlet, and another, and another. And she says all these starlets were getting these roles. She saw them, ascending. Of course, she never did. And then came Mary Beth Wooten. And Mary Beth Wooten met with Gene, and 9 months later had a little baby. And of course, Gene didn't want anything to do with the baby. So he's not going to deal with it. And Mary Beth doesn't have any friends in town, so she goes to Rita. Rita doesn't want to deal with it. So she said, I gave her $100 and sent her on her way, knowing that, she had to pull herself up herself at this point. And she goes, yeah. She goes, I knew exactly what I was doing. And she goes, it wasn't a good thing, kind of thing. And she goes, and of course, a week later, Mary Beth had taken her own life, committed suicide. It was in the papers, but nothing was mentioned about the child. And she thought about adopting the child, but just as she was thinking about doing that, she got a call for that role in the Congo movie, which of course changed her life, which she thought was penance for what she did. That was her punishment for what she had done to Mary Beth, which is kind of fucked up. And the old man leans into her and he says, I think you got your power back, is what he says to her. And at this point, you kind of know this was kind of telegraphed about who the old man was. We know who the old man is. The old man is actually Mr. Nobody. You can totally tell at this point. Yeah, it was no surprise on this one because he, of course, is trying to delay her and, of course, find a bit more about her background because he doesn't know everything, even though he might think he's omnipotent. There we go. He's not. Of course, he has finite abilities as well. So Larry and the entity are being tortured again. We go back to the ant farm, back when Larry was part of the ant farm, and thrown back into the cell. And Flex tries to convince Larry, of course, to reach through the wall again and pull out the cords. And that's when Forsyth comes in. So he closes back up the hole, and Forsyth wheels in a television. He goes, I've got something for you. He goes, what, a boob tube? And he goes, no, something else. He goes, you're property of the U.S. government now. And he goes, I want to show you what we're going to do here. And he's got, of course, Flex Mentallo's wife. We've got Dolores. And he shows her on the TV. And one of the agents on the TV is burning her hair with a blowtorch. Yeah, at this point. And Flex says sorry to the entity, to Sparky. He goes, sorry, Sparky. That's what he's been calling it, is Sparky. And does what they want. He gets up out of the chair and goes with them. And of course, he's resigned to doing what they want. Otherwise, they're going to hurt his wife. The entity gets pissed off and literally just starts bouncing off the walls. And Larry wakes up in his room and says, I didn't know. He goes, all this time, he goes, I could have freed us. And he goes, instead, I just kind of, trapped us in there for decades. He goes, I'm very, I apologize for that. He goes, I'm really sorry. In the meantime, Cliff and Flex are watching his soap opera with the episode with Cliff in it. And Cliff is a horrible fucking actor. He's playing himself, of course, as a race car driver, but his lines are just completely wooden and delivered horribly. It's pretty damn hilarious, actually. And Jane comes in and she just wants to burn Flex at this point. She's got a blowtorch in her hand and says, you know what, we need to get him to use his superpower. And Cliff takes her aside and he goes, no, 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 no. As Jane says, we need to wake this chuckle fuck up. Yes, she used the word chuckle fuck, which, if you know anything about this podcast, chuckle fuck is one of my favorite words. It's from, of course, a little kind of tiny podcast called Future Man, or TV show, I should say, called Future Man. That, yes, exactly, Mufinobi, Future Man. I love that Jane used chuckle fuck. So now we have chuckle fuck in 2 different series both by female actresses, which I thought was awesome. So yeah, I am very, very pleased by that. I know it's a little thing, but yeah, sure, why not? So Cliff tries to talk her out of it, of course, and going, didn't you get any empathy from anything that's going on inside of you? And Jane gets pissed at this point. She goes, fuck you, Cliff. She's basically just kind of going at him like, fuck off and die, Cliff. Eat shit and die, Cliff. All this kind of stuff. And finally goes, I'm sorry. He says, I'm sorry. He goes, I saw that part of you inside of you that I shouldn't have seen. And I'm sorry. And he says, and if you want to talk, he goes, I'm here to talk about it. And that actually gets to her finally, and she's okay with it at this point. So, yeah. So at this point, Larry comes in and says, I know a way of getting his mind back. Dolores. He needs to get Dolores. And they're like, what, the old lady that at the ant farm? And she goes, and that's when, Jane says, I'll take care of her. I'll get her. I'm not scared of the bitch. And she takes off and comes back with Dolores from the ant farm. And she's the old lady, of course, who wiped Vic's mind, or actually just used her little thingy on her elbow and to wipe Vic's mind. And Flex sees her and actually snaps out of it finally. And he starts calling her Dolly, and he says, Dolly, oh my God, you're here and everything. And he snaps out of it, knows that he's Flex. He says it's Flex. And she finally snaps out of her programming too. And she goes, oh, there's that smile. And we see them hug, they reunite. And Cliff immediately is like, where the hell's the chief? And Jane's like, just give it a second, let them have their, their moment, and then we can, move on to things. And then all of a sudden we start hearing a beeping, and Dolores starts screaming and starts disintegrating too. And she kind of screams out, she goes, they told me if I ever tried to find you, this would happen. And we just see her disintegrate and fade away. And of course, Flex screams out and flexes, if you will, and blows out the entire power in the mansion. Yeah. Kind of a tragic end to that, but we knew that was going to happen at some point. Because, yeah, the age difference he hasn't aged. I'm trying to figure out what the fuck the ant farm has been doing to people to make them not age. Because Jane didn't age. She was in the ant farm for a little bit. Of course, Larry has his thing going on, but with his entity. And Flex didn't age. So I don't know what's going on at this point. So Rita comes back and tells Vic that it'll be all right, that he just needs to do it so that they can find the chief. And she's going to be there for him. And she goes, Mr. Nobody is a bully, is what she says, and you need to stand up to him. Grid isn't going to hurt you. You need to just do it and get it over with, kind of thing. And he's still kind of not really digging this. And finally he says, you know what, I'll do it. He goes, but I'm going to stay here with my dad. You guys are on your own. You guys go find Niles. I'm staying here with my dad. So he uploads Grid, and we see Rita walking out of the hospital. And then we see the old man. He's kind of sitting there in the lobby, and he walks over and says, of course, he goes, good for you, Rita. And he turns into Mr. Nobody, of course, and says, this episode was very cathartic for Miss Farr. And oh God, there's more. Yes, it was Ed Asner, Joe Greer. That's right. It was Ed Asner as the old man. But I love that Mr. Nobody just keeps breaking that fucking fourth wall. He goes, "Oh my god, there's more?" And we see Cliff apologizing to Flex for losing his wife and everything. And Larry starts coughing up blood. I mean, he just starts coughing up blood big time. And the entity is going to enter. And, Cliff's like, "What the fuck are you waiting for?" Is what he says to the entity. "Get inside of him, help him." And Larry waves him off and says, "You know what? One of us needs to be happy at this point. One of us needs to make it." He goes, "Fly off, buddy. Make it, survive for the two of us," kind of thing. And the entity does it. The entity leaves, and hears him coughing outside and stops. It's up in the air. It's flying up in the air, and it stops. And then we see it fly back in and just flies right back into Larry and basically revives him, if you will. And they ask, "Is that okay? Did that do it for you?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I think we're getting better," is what Larry says. He's now using "we" instead of "me," which is good. So we're seeing the team actually kind of gelling now at this point. And Rita comes in and says, "That's good because I know where to find Chief and I'm ready to fight. Ready to find Chief at this point." And they all say, "I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to find Chief," and all this. And just as the heroic music starts to swell to a crescendo, it stops with a pause. You see a pause button on the TV screen. And we see it on a tablet, and we hear Mr. Nobody mocking the music. He's kind of, and he says, "Finally, 13 episodes of character building." He goes, "We don't need any of that shit." He goes, "We're finally getting the superhero show that we wanted." After 13 pointless episodes. Heroes versus villain. Me. I love that whole thing. He's just going off, and of course, he's got the poster of Doom Patrol hanging there in his little white area, if you will. And he pauses for a second. He goes, "We get the heroes," and he looks over and then rips out Cyborg's face. "We get the hero team that we wanted." Oh god, it was actually very beautiful at that point. And so yeah, sorry for the dog hearing you can hear in the background there. That is not my dog. That is a neighbor's dog, which is a little pain in the ass. Yes, it is fucking awesome movie for Nobi. Tudyk does rock. He rocks fucking hard, man. And that's what I'm saying. That last little bit of the episode was fucking awesome. That's what kind of elevated this from a really great episode to a fantastic episode. And the teaser is also very good as well. Mufinobi, I have to admit, yes. Is the dog a hellhound? No, it's a Chihuahua, which is kind of the same thing. Those are usually one and the same. See, I think they got the whole thing wrong about hell. It's not Cerebus, this big dog or whatever. It's Chihuahuas. It's a bunch of just Chihuahuas, like thousands of them. They're legion. But yeah, this episode was awesome, man. And I mean, to the people that hate this series, I don't know what your problem is, quite honestly. This is what you live for in comics. You want character building in comics. This is stories that are ripped from the comics pretty much. And there are scenes ripped from the comics. They're doing a fantastic job of this. And also, they kind of elevated Mr. Nobody a bit more as well. Instead of being just this guy who fucks with people's minds, to this kind of semi omnipotent being who does fuck with people's minds, but also just fucks with their reality as well. And I loved how they, yes, exactly, Mufinobi. It is layered. It's really great. Um, a pack of chihuahuas like piranhas. No, like legion. It's like thousands of them, where they're just walls of them. They're just rolling over one another, eating each other, and just procreating with each other and having new ones. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Yeah. This one is not terrified, Striking Bitch. It's just always. Any news if Doom Patrol will get renewed for season 2? Possibly, because I think it's DC Universe's highest rated show right now. So, yeah, Marks, I'm pretty sure it's going to get renewed, unlike some other shit that's out there right now, which I will talk about tomorrow on Saturday Morning Blast Off. See how I plugged that one? I kind of rolled that right into that plug. Yeah, that's how I do that. They do have to do another. Yeah, they have to do another season. I did love how Mr. Nobody kind of referenced that, it was only supposed to be 13 episodes, but now they have 15 episodes. He kind of did it in a sly way too. He goes, 13 pointless episodes, and now we get to the good stuff. And yeah, this is the reason why, is because it's so damn good. That's why they gave it 3 extra episodes and took away 3 episodes from Swamp Thing. Yeah, I'm fairly sure that's the reason why. Mork says, yes, I want an assist on that one. Yeah, yes. Ooh, spoilers for tomorrow. Still no word on Deadly Class. Deadly Class is on the cusp. That's all I'm going to say. It's doing a lot better than another show that's on Fox right now. And no, it's not Star Trek: The Next Generation, but it's close. Movie for Noise says, I'm wondering if Mr. Nobody needs Vic Grid Online to track the Beard Guzzler, the Beard Hunter, because he needed them to do the work. Mr. Nobody using the team. No, I think it was just it was part of their growth and where they needed to go in order to become this team, as he said. He says, finally a team worthy of fighting me, essentially. They made it through the trials that he had set before them. They made it through. He mind fucked them pretty damn hard. He really did. I mean, Rita came through it like a champ. She was the first one to come through it and lead the others around to it as well. Larry was the second one that was coming through it. Jane the third, and Cliff. So there is a spoiler for next week. They did the little teaser trailer, and Mr. Nobody has Mr. Robot Man in his white universe, whatever it is there, and says if stupidity were a superpower, you would be fucking Superman, is what he tells Robot Man. Which I thought was pretty damn funny, and it's true because Cliff is that damn stupid. Cliff made it through. He hasn't really had any crisis, if you will, other than what we first saw him in the first 2 episodes. And he made it through his crisis already. And his biggest crisis was what's going on with his daughter. And we already went through that. That was just kind of that was a small aside, honestly, his crisis compared to what else is going on in that episode. So yeah, it's the other characters really needed to work through some shit in order to do this. And Vic is the one that's most damaged right now. He was the one that was a superhero. He was known already for working with the Justice League, and yet he's so damaged by what happened that he doesn't even want to go with them at this point. Yeah. Movie Finale says we still need to understand the foreshadowing in her painting. Oh, about Vic turning rogue. Again, I still think I agree with what Jane says. It was just shit that Mr. Nobody's doing to fuck with them. Quite honestly. Yes. So nobody wants a worthy challenger. I like the way you phrase that, Viking bitch. It's pretty funny. Yes, Mr. Nobody wanted a worthy challenger. So that's what he was doing this entire time, was he was building them up. And if they did not, so the first Doom Patrol, of course, weren't up to the challenge. They cracked under pressure and they paid the price. The second Doom Patrol that we have now here has actually made it through the trials. They've proved themselves a worthy challenger to Mr. Nobody. And there we go. I wouldn't be surprised if the first team had lost, had to go and find Chief as well. And I'm hoping that they're kind of going to go back to that and to see what kind of broke them. And I'm fairly sure they will. They wouldn't set it up for that. No, he hadn't worked for jail. Oh, that's right. He hadn't worked for Justice League yet in the series, but he knows them. Like he knows who Batman. He's actually worked with Batman. He's worked with Superman. He's worked with all of them at one point or time or another. Bork says, I think the painting foreshadowing could be Vic rescuing them, not destroying them. I don't think we will get our expectations. Yeah, that could be that too, that the entire team dies and it's Vic. Oh, you know what it is? That's what it is. Without Vic as God, now Vic's father, said, he goes, "You're the linchpin. You are important to this entire team. It's not just him getting them out. He actually is integral to the team to getting them to survive Mr. Nobody as well." So that's the foreshadowing right there, is that it's going to take all of them together to survive Mr. Nobody. And if Cyborg Vic does not step in with them, then they're all going to die. And that painting is actually him finding their bodies, and they're all dead, and him uh, basically breaking finally. That's the final break, is that he wasn't there for them to help them, and they've all died. No, I'm not that smart, fucking bitch. I just kind of work things out. I follow the trail of breadcrumbs that the writers leave. The writers are the smart ones, by the way. So if you haven't seen them on Twitter, they're up there. They're called Room Patrol. So they are the writers' room for Doom Patrol. They actually have their own account as well. And I actually have put them on this as well. Yeah, they're out there as well. Those guys are smart motherfuckers. That's all I'm going to say. So Joker says Vic is like a junior varsity player working towards becoming a varsity player, or working towards becoming pro at this point, too, Joe. So that's what's going on. Movie for Nobody says, wonder if their team up next week is on the street. I don't know. That would be interesting if it is. You want to hire broom patrol? You have to pay extra for that one, Movie for Nobody, if you want them to clean. Slurmy Scott says, Morks, you got to get those fangs fixed. You sound like a snake hissing. All right. Yeah, no, this is a good episode. And like I said, just follow the breadcrumbs. It's all you got to do. This is a smart series. They are doing this purposely to they're not leading you down wrong trails, kind of like what Counterpart would do with some things. They actually are giving you all this information, and you just need to put it together. And that's what I just did here. I was actually thinking through it on the air. You get to see, if you probably saw some smoke coming out of the, actually, you probably didn't, because I have these in, so the smoke is kept inside. But you could see how the brain process was working there. Yeah. Movie for Nobody says, honest trailers this past week did The Mummy. They called Brendan Fraser Dune Patrol. Funny. Yeah. So if you like what you see here, hit the subscribe button. You can also hit the like button. If you don't like what you see here, hit the dislike button. I just asked you to go down in the comment section and give me a, little constructive criticism about what you didn't like. Also, you can hit the button, you can hit the bell if you want to know when I'm on live again. You can also go into the bell settings and set the settings for as much or as little notifications as possible. You still get a 50-50 chance of Google notifying you of when I'm going to be on live. I do try to stick to my schedule. Today I was a little bit late because it took me a little bit longer to take notes than I thought I was going to. So it happens when you get old. You start going, what? Huh? And you start writing a little slower. You get the hand cramp, arthritis kicks in and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, tardy to the party. It was supposed to be 6:30 and I ended up going at 7. So, yeah, that's what happens. I might actually move it to 7 anyway. Just to give me a little bit more time to do all this. And yeah. And you're right, Slurmy Scott. Tomorrow is Saturday morning blast off. That's at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. SBO. Yes, we don't want to call it SMBO because SMBO can phonetically sound like something that is a racial term, and I really don't want to do that. So it's SBO. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. Excuse me. Sundays, I just all of a sudden my mind just went, and you saw the brain fart going live there. Sundays is going to be Game of Thrones. Monday is The Tick season 2. Yes, I'm going back to that. And Wednesdays is Happy, not just being happy, but the show Happy. And Thursdays, of course, is iZombie. Maybe not for too much longer if it doesn't get any better. So you can find that schedule on suspendedfanimation.com. I didn't complete that part. And also on my Facebook page that also has that same information up there. Let's see. I have a Twitter. I have an Instagram. I also have a Patreon as well. The Patreon hasn't set up with tiers as of yet because I'm trying to figure out what kind of tiers I want to do and what I'm going to do for those tiers. So I'm not going to dance like a monkey. And no, Morks, or who was it who said it? I know someone asked me about taking off my shirt. Not going to happen. Hey, Asaro. And besides that, no one wants to see that because he'd just be blinded by white light at this point. Yeah. Oh, Slurmy. That was Slurmy that asked that. Okay. I can never remember. See, that's the other thing about aging. You never remember who said what or when. I'm like Flex Mentallo. I don't know. I don't know. We need to wake this chuckle fuck up. I'm glad that chuckle fuck has made it into the vernacular now. Maybe we can get a real calendar this time. Yeah, thanks, Patreon. Yeah, thanks, Mood for Nobi on that one. You want a real calendar on that? Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen. So I can only go week by week, to tell you the truth. Quite honestly, if I do any longer than that, I really don't know. Yeah, a suspended Fanimation calendar? No. I know what you're talking about, and no, that ain't gonna happen. We can. God, no. You know what? Maybe it could be a pepper calendar. How about that? You know? Yeah, she's laying there. She's agreeing. I think that'll work. All of your fun thumbnails. Yeah. I don't know if I sell those things out, something like that, they might copyright strike me or something like that. Who knows? Mork, still he thought it was me who asked to take the shirt off. Sorry, Morks. Pepper in superhero cosplay? Possibly. Or just Pepper in she does not wear costumes at all. She hates wearing stuff. I mean, absolutely hates wearing stuff. Even in wintertime when it's cold and I have a little sweater on her to take her out to go and potty, she hates that. Absolutely hates that. I just wanted to see if she actually perked up her ears when I said that the P word there. Trust me, she would not just fight back. She would take out revenge on me while I slept. So, yeah, she is that kind of dog. She is that vindictive. She has done it to me in the past, and will probably do it again to me in the future. Yeah, trust me, I'm waiting for another one. She's been kind of quiet as of late with those Morks. She'll cut you while you sleep. Yeah, she will. She definitely will. Mufinobi says Morks, I like Nerps, but Dennis can have his privacy. Oh man. Oh, so if you're still on the fence about joining up, even with that preview of things that have been going on, you're going to see a video pop up here. That's going to take a video from my video library according to what you've been viewing on YouTube. All those nasty, nasty videos that you've been watching. It's going to take the nastiest one out of my video library and show it to you. And if you like what you see there, then you can hit the subscribe button over this way. So, yeah, pour some hot. I'm not going to pour hot grits. I mean, man, that'll burn me. Have you ever had hot grits poured on you, Joker, by accident? You ever spilled some on your hand? That fucking shit burns and it sticks there too. Yes, I know I just took it literal, but still, hey. I know it's Al Green. I do. Man, that's just some bad shit. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah, it's been a week. That's all I'm gonna say. It's been one hell of a week. Hence the Jack and Ginger that's going on here. You can hear that? Yeah, there we go. Good night, Morks. It is time to go. Again, thank you everybody in the chat who joined tonight. Come back tomorrow morning for Saturday morning blast off. We're gonna talk about a lot of different shit. And don't forget to take a look at the video, hit the subscribe button, and don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Otherwise, you're gonna have Mr. Nobody fucking with your shit later on, just because he can and wants to see if you're worthy. Good night, everybody.